I'm uploading this about a week after I would have liked, but I want to talk about it because December 25th was quite the special occasion. Yes, I celebrated Christmas like many others did, but the 25th was also the 1 year mark of the day I gave Skyrim a second chance. Yeah, it's hard to believe. The game that now sits prominently in my top 5 all-time favorites I originally didn't like. This is that story. The story of why I gave Skyrim a second chance, and why I'm thankful indefinitely for doing so. So now would be a good time to go get some popcorn, maybe grab a cold drink, and just sit back and relax. Because odds are, this video is going to get lengthy, because I got a lot to say. So by the time Skyrim was released on November 11th, 2011, my brother had been anticipating it for months. He went to the midnight release, waited in line, and over the next month or so, he played it every single day. Then, in December, when I came home from college for Christmas vacation, I saw him playing it. And he had just got it on the PC as well. Just bought it on PC for himself too, and said, if you want to borrow my 360 copy and play it, see what it's about, go ahead. You should play it. And I said, okay, I'll take this and try it out. But back then I was stuck in that monophobic, stick to what you know mindset at the time. I spent most of the time playing Modern Warfare 3 online matches, which retrospectively was a mistake because I didn't realize what I was missing. When the break was over and it was time for me to head back to school, I brought the copy of Skyrim with me. And it sat there next to my other games on the shelf for a few weeks. Again, I hardly looked at it. I just kept saying, I'll get around to it, I'll play it, I'll eventually play it, get around to it. Then one weekend I finally did. I said, you know what? It's time for me to see what this game's about. And so I took it, put it in the 360 tray, loaded it up, and at that point I knew next to nothing about it, other than that it was my brother's favorite game now, and that it was a fantasy RPG that could be toggled from first to third person. The views were interchangeable. But other than that, I didn't know much. And it faded in on the opening scene where you're a prisoner in the cart and listening to Rayloff, and from there I think I made it to the Way of the Voice quest. But up to that point, I just didn't get into it. For some reason, the game just didn't click with me at the time. I'm still not exactly sure why. Before I continue, there's something you should know about this entire situation. For months at a time now, I had been playing almost nothing but first-person shooters, and my brain had become so trained in that style. The linear corridor, always know where you go kind of mindset, the fast-paced action, the quick missions, I gotten used to that. Later, I came up with the term FPS brain to describe this phenomenon. And so it might have been because of that mindset that I just wasn't open to this game. I wasn't willing to experience it the way it was supposed to be experienced. And so when I made it to Iverstead on the Way of the Voice, I followed the quest arrow. I literally followed the quest arrow up the side of the mountain. I didn't find the 7,000 steps. I just went right up the side of the mountain, and of course hit an invisible wall, and after about 15 minutes trying to figure it out, I gave up and turned the game off, saying, it's too hard, don't know where to go. I think back on it now and laugh because it's that cliched, if I had a time machine kind of situation. I'm thinking I'd go back and punch myself in the face for being so stupid. But it's true. Back then, I didn't know the clairvoyance spell, which I could have used to find the correct path, or the obvious location of the 7,000 steps. I just wasn't open to it. I just wasn't willing to explore and experience the game. And that was the fatal flaw, the Achilles heel, so to speak, in my psychology at the time with regards to gaming. Now, I'd see my brother every weekend, pretty much. I'd drive home from school every weekend, and I'd see him playing it. And I'd listen to him talk with all his friends about it, and saw how much fun they were having. Just saw how much they enjoyed talking about this game together. They enjoyed playing and experiencing it, and I thought, geez, I want that too, I want to share this commonality with my brother and his friends here. I want to be able to play this game, to understand it, and be able to talk about it and enjoy it like they do. And I started thinking, what went wrong? What was the reason for my giving up on this? And I thought, well, it was too hard. I didn't know where to go. I was still thinking that at the time. But the more I watched my brother play it, and saw the fun he was having, I started to get over that, to break down that mental wall I had put up when I initially played it. I started to think, hey, I'm going to give this game a second chance. I should. I owe it at least that. And that was the mindset that evolved over the next year or so. From early 2012 to mid to late 2013, that's how it went. And as December came along, my brother's 360 copy had been absolutely shredded by one of his friend's consoles. There was now no way for me to play the game. And so for Christmas, I asked my parents for a copy of Skyrim. And much to my satisfaction, I got one on Christmas Day, the Platinum Hits version. And after we went to go see The Hobbit, I sat down at my desk, put the game in the tray, and again, I watched that opening scene fade in after the titles and said, okay, here we go. I'm going to go into this with an open mind, a willingness to explore, to learn the game over time. I'm going to play this game, and I am going to enjoy it. And that was pretty much the mindset I carried with me for the next month or so at least. Letting myself get completely entrenched in this game, and learning it, just exploring and going wherever it took me. Really learning the mechanics of it, just learning the map, learning the environments, learning key locations, enemies, smithing, what ore made which armor, what weapons were the coolest or had the best stats. There was also enchanting, figuring out what enchantments worked best for me and on which pieces of armor or weapons. I also learned all these little glitches and exploits that were left in the game even after the 1.9 patch, such as the Whiterun and Dawnstar chest, the 3 to 6 time use of the Augma Infinium. I learned all about the different skills and the best way to level them up. I remember as I got into the game further and was doing the peace treaty negotiation quest in High Hrothgar between the Empire and the Stormcloaks, just how much mental anguish I went through while trying to pick the dialogue options, and I saw the results, and no matter who I sided with, someone was mad. And that just proved to myself how invested I was in my character and this world, just how completely immersed I was. By that point, I got my first character to level 60 before I realized all the mistakes that I had made throughout my playthrough. And from there, I started replaying it time and again. And the rest, as they say, is history. Playthrough after playthrough, I'd evolve as a player, learning new things each time. I was hooked. I couldn't put it down. And when I wasn't playing Skyrim, I was thinking about playing Skyrim, watching videos of it, learning even more. And when I'd get home and start playing it again, I'd think to myself, what changed? What changed from that first time I played it to now? Well, maybe it was that utter resistance I had at the beginning. It was just too big of a game to tackle at the time with the psychology I had going, the FPS brain. I had to go into it with a new perspective and an open mind, and a willingness to learn and explore. That was what changed. I'm almost certain that is why. However, another thing to note is that the more time I invested into the game, the more I learned. And the more I learned, the more I began to like and appreciate it. Kind of like because I knew more about it and started remembering where to go and what to do, it just became easier for my mind to accept. Like, oh yeah, I know where this is. I can go do this now. I've been here before. I'm catching on to this. And this, I'm sure, also played an integral role. I went through something similar when I got my first console, a GameCube, in 2002. One of the games I got with it was Metroid Prime. And when I first played it, I didn't like it for, shocking, I know, the same reasons I initially didn't like Skyrim, saying it was too hard and I didn't know where to go. But in middle school, I gave Metroid Prime a second chance, much like I did with Skyrim. And the same principles applied. The same. Now here, I had friends to talk to who already liked Metroid Prime, and I got their input and instruction, and I even borrowed a strategy guide. I learned the game in very much the same way. Now, it's going on 13 years later, and I've beaten Metroid Prime close to 30 times with 100% and have the game entirely memorized. Just like I now have Skyrim memorized. Or Condemned, Mario Sunshine, BioShock, or any of the Pokemon games on Game Boy Color. I now have memorized. But how I got there was by just continually playing and playing and playing at it until I had it memorized. I had to go through a learning curve. The learning process. Getting to know the game. You have to learn something before you can memorize it. Seeing the parallels between the Metroid Prime example and the Skyrim example, it made me think about that old phrase. How does it go? Those who don't remember their history are doomed to repeat it. And that's exactly what happened. I should have taken the Metroid Prime example and applied it to Skyrim from the get-go. It's something I had been through before, something I had been prepared for. But I ignored it. I wasn't willing. So what's the moral here, if you will? Why am I talking about this, and why should anyone who's watching right now care? Well, first of all, if you haven't played Skyrim, play it. And secondly, because the principle of second chances can apply to anyone. Is there a game on your shelf you tried once and put down, and now haven't played for months? Do you want to get into a game, but can't due to time, or like me, psychology? Do yourself a favor and give it a second chance. Because you never know, it might end up becoming your favorite game of all time. That's what happened to me. To complete a game like Skyrim or any new game someone picks up can seem like a grand task, especially if said person works, or goes to school, or doesn't have hours and hours a week to dedicate to learning a new game, to really get into it. I'm in that camp currently. I work crazy night hours, so picking up and learning a new game is very difficult. This ties into the principle that human beings like to take the path of least resistance. We stick to what we know. It's human nature. But if we do that, we can miss out on some great experiences, just like I did with Skyrim. I'm so appreciative that I gave the game a second chance, because if I hadn't, I might have missed out on one of the most fun, immersive, and addicting games I have ever played. As of today, I've played through it multiple times on 360 and PC, and I'm still learning new things about it each time. It's a game with almost infinite replay value, well, with all the different races and playstyles to choose from. Now, there is a small disclaimer to be made here, of course. Skyrim is one of those games that's heavily revered as being a fantastic RPG and experience. It's a good game by many standards that is very worth playing, but also very accessible. Arguably the most accessible game in the Elder Scrolls franchise. So it's very accommodating to the whole change your mindset and go in willing to learn and willing to love a game principle. Especially if you're like me and didn't play a whole lot of RPGs before Skyrim. It's a good place to start. However, there's a chance that this change your mindset principle isn't going to work for every game, especially for a game that's particularly bad or unplayable. Though you're listening to someone right now who likes both Shell Shock 2 and Rogue Warrior, two games I have fond memories of, but both are regarded as some of the worst on the Xbox 360. So, you never know. In the end, I went from not liking Skyrim to having invested at least 1,000 hours into it. From Christmas 2013 to now, a little over a year later, I'm proud to say that it indefinitely holds a strong place in my top 5. If you enjoyed this video or had a similar experience with a game, please share in the comment section below. I'd certainly like to hear them. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm TheAnodyneWonder, and thanks for watching. Later.